Sheila Gunn Reid for Rebel News, and I'm here today to report a breaking and urgent verdict in the case of the contempt hearing for Chris Scott of the Whistle Stop Cafe. Justice Adam Germain, just this morning, found small-town business owner Chris Scott guilty of breaching a May 6th court order that restrained him from organizing, participating, or promoting illegal public gatherings, which in Alberta at the time meant protests against the lockdown restrictions and church services when neither of those things conformed perfectly to public health orders regarding social distancing, masking, or capacity limits. You could protest the government, you just couldn't do it with a bunch of people to show the government how many of you were mad. Now, for those of you who don't know, Chris Scott is the owner of the Whistle Stop Cafe in beautiful Mirror, Alberta. Population, give or take, approximately 500 people. Scott reopened his restaurant in defiance of the lockdowns back in January, and he's been fighting for freedom ever since with the help of Rebel News's viewers and our largest civil liberties initiative to date, FightTheFines.com, where we put people like Chris Scott in touch with lawyers like Chad Williamson from Williamson Law at no cost to the client to help them fight their lockdown tickets and summonses, and I guess in this case, contempt allegations in court before a judge. Now, immediately after Chris Scott reopened his restaurant back in January, he came under constant police surveillance and Alberta Health Services inspections. And Chris Scott was very nearly thrown in jail once before for his act of defiance. However, this time, the government preemptively got a court order in secret, preventing Chris Scott from holding a 1,500-person protest against the lockdown at his restaurant that the government had seized from him and chained up in the very same week. You see, the government couldn't make Chris close his doors through threats, so they physically seized the property, the building, including his gas station and convenience store, and his campground and his restaurant, resulting in collective punishment for the entire town of Mirror, whose closest convenience store was 20 kilometers away. Friends, the government literally got a court order restraining a small business owner from protesting the restraints the government put on his business. They got a court order because they wanted him to stop being mad about the government making him go broke. And then when Chris Scott protested anyway, the government threw him in jail for 3 full days. And I think I'm glossing over the sleaziest part of all of this. The government got their May 6th court order completely in secret. The government failed to inform the court that Chris Scott was represented by a lawyer named Chad Williamson, but the government also failed to inform Chad Williamson, someone the government knows full well exists, that there were legal proceedings against his client. Now, the terrible news out of a court in Calgary today is that Justice Adam Germain found that Chris Scott was guilty of contempt and that the government's case met the 3 criteria for contempt. And those are that the person and the act being restrained in the order was clear, that the person had adequate service of the order, and that the person named in the order intended to breach the order. So there's one more very sleazy aspect to all of this. The government has not yet been perfectly clear about whether they plan to seek further imprisonment as a penalty for contempt. They've already taken 3 days of this man's life because he held a protest in a free country against the things the government was doing to him. And now the government could potentially be asking for more time. We'll find out what the penalty is on July 27th for Chris Scott, but there could be no penalty at all because Chris Scott and his lawyer, Chad Williamson, are back in court, in provincial appeals court this week on Wednesday, so June 30th, because they are appealing the original court order against Chris Scott, saying the order itself and the way it was sought in secret violates the fundamental principles of justice and thus prevented Chris from having legal representation, which is one of his charter rights. So with all that being said, the good news is that the fight isn't even close to over. In fact, the biggest fight is yet to come, I think, on Wednesday, because Chris Scott and his lawyer, Chad Williamson, are arguing that the government is the one that acted illegally here. If you'd like to help us Help Chris Scott as he fights for his business and for freedom, and to teach the government a lesson about Canadians' rights to a fair court system. Please donate today at fightthefines.com. For Rebel News, I'm Sheila Gunn Reid. If you'd like to help us help Chris Scott and his lawyer Chad Williamson as they're in court fighting for fundamental freedom for restaurant owners, but for anybody accused of anything in the court system, please donate today at fightthefines.com. And good news, all donations there now qualify for a charitable tax receipt through the registered Canadian charity, the Democracy Fund.